If you like politics and giving your opponents creatures just to kill them later for value, I have the deck for you. Kambal Profiteering Mayor is a new human advisor with a very interesting triggered ability. Whenever one or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them, create a tapped token that's a copy of it. This ability triggers once each turn. So we are going to want to play spells that give our opponents tokens, because then we'll get those tokens too. Hunted Horror becomes 2 mana for 13 power over 3 bodies. That's pretty cracked. Our Generous Gift now also gives us an elephant token as we blow up our opponent's best permanent. That's pretty sweet. This deck makes me want to say 1 for you, 2 for me, as we are also going to be running token doublers so that we get double the value that we give our opponents. If you guys have been keeping up with my channel for a while, this might remind you of my Griswold deck, and that is exactly why I was immediately drawn to Kambal. Kambal also has a second ability that drains the table whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under our control. So this is the life drain version of Griswold's Voltron deck. So if this sounds like a deck you guys are interested in, stick around to see how busted this false group hug deck really is. Our main win cons are going to be aristocrats. If you squint, our commander is basically a token doubler in the command zone. Sure, it isn't going to double our tokens, but he still is doubling the amount of bodies that we are putting onto the board. This means aristocrats that trigger whenever any creature dies, such as Blood Artist and its much bigger brother Vein Ripper, put in a ton of work here. Sadly, there aren't too many effects that trigger off any creature dying, so we also have these to round out our win con package. Our secondary win con involves just pumping our tokens. Since most of the tokens we make are going to be the exact same as our opponents, a +1/+1 counter on our whole board from Shadrix or a +2/+2 from Inspiring Leader can go a long way in terms of winning combat. Our commander's life drain effect is also no joke, and will consistently have you 10 to 20 life ahead of the rest of the table. Let's break down our token makers. Now, it's important to understand exactly how Kambal's first ability is worded to get the most value out of it. Kambal will make us all the tokens put into play under our opponent's plural control as long as they are created as part of one singular effect. This means cards like Alliance of Arms, even if we are the only player who pays into it, and let's say we pay something chill like X equals 3, so each player will create 3 1/1 white soldier tokens, and all these creatures are being created as part of the same effect. So even though each opponent is only making 3, Kambal will see all 9 of those tokens being made at the same time, so we're going to get an additional 9 tapped soldiers. So we just made 12 bodies for 4 mana. That is an absolutely insane rate. We have a bunch of creatures that give our opponents creatures when they ETB, such as the hunted creatures. We have Tribute to Hirobi, which will give us 6 tokens over 2 turns, and then flip into a 3/3 Flying Haste with some card advantage attached. We also have some ways to put tokens into play on our opponent's turns to take advantage of Kambal's once each turn restriction. I also want to shout out the War Games from the Doctor Who set. This is a similar rate to Alliance of Arms, where we are going to make 12 bodies for 4 mana, but then the War Games is going to buff up those tokens by +2 over the next 2 turns, and it goads them all. That's going to close out a game really fast. We also have the token doublers, as I mentioned before, to really increase our advantage and just really flood the board with tons of bodies for our aristocrat effects. We also get to play a lot of really powerful removal that normally have downsides, but in this deck, it's all upside, baby. All these removal spells that give our opponents tokens in exchange for ruining their day just become amazing when we have Kambal in play. We also have a few board wipes and additional removal spells to round out our suite. This is a very interactive deck, as most Orzhov decks should be. We have a bunch of powerful card draw. Benny Brax is especially strong. We will usually be in a position to trigger him multiple times a turn cycle. Same with Takasia's Welcome and Welcoming Vampire. Wedding Ring is also really fun. When it enters our opponent, will make a copy, but then we're also going to make a token copy, so we're going to end up with 2 wedding rings on our finger, and we'll be drawing 2 cards every time that opponent draws a card on their turn, which is pretty insane. Put this on the blue player. Yes, please. We are, of course, also a token deck, so we're going wide, which means Gix is going to be putting in a ton of work, both incentivizing our opponents to swing at each other and giving us tons of card draw. We got some protection, including an ink shield in case things get out of hand and we give too many tokens away. I really like Over Encumbered here too. I normally think this card is pretty bad, but this can shut down artifact decks from being able to attack at all and be a nuisance for any deck with mana rocks, while also giving us some card advantage. Authority of the Consuls is also really nice to make sure we aren't giving people active blockers when we give them tokens. We get to play some pretty cool pieces of ramp as well. Bucknard's Everfull Purse is pretty sweet, since whenever our opponents activate it to make treasures and pass it around, we are going to get those treasures too. Dowsing Dagger is amazing. You guys know I love this card, and it's even better when we get the O2 plants as well. Marching Duodrone is probably the best 2-drop in the entire deck. If we can curve Duodrone into Kambal and attack, we can immediately make 4 treasures on turn 3, setting us up for a super explosive turn 4 with 8 mana. We also have Amulet of Vigor, which is really busts Kambal open, making it so that the tokens we make are untapped, and we can therefore use any treasure that we make immediately to cast instants or something like that, or have blockers available on an opponent's turn. Finally, we have a bit of recursion to rebuy our most important pieces. I also included a few ways to reuse ETBs from our hunted creatures that also just provide decent protection and value, especially Saw in Half. This thing goes crazy on a Vein Ripper or Massacre Worm. It's pretty incredible. I really love the card. It's just really fun, really powerful. And that's going to do it for this False Gifts deck tech. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my OnlyLands for the spiciest deck content on the internet. And I'll see you next time. Peace!